Okay, welcome everyone to our webinar on democratizing protein science, brought to you by the Protein Society. My name is Liz Meyering. I'm the president of the Protein Society, and I'm humbled to introduce our webinar today on this very important topic, which is hosted by our Community Opportunity and Action Committee. And this webinar is in response to the serious challenges we're facing due to funding cuts and directives for how we do our work. And so this is part of our response to support our community and figure out how we can proceed constructively at this time. Before I turn this over to Sheila Jaswal, who is the chair of our COA committee, I have just a couple of brief announcements. So we are continuing to do our work through our symposium. So I'd like to invite you all to join us at the symposium this summer in San Francisco. We have a stellar program, which you can see at our website. And in response to the current funding challenges, the Protein Society has decided to provide an unprecedented number of travel awards. And so these are still open and available on a first come, first served basis. So I encourage you to go there and register. I also want to highlight the journal of our society, Protein Science, which is led by our outstanding editorial team, led by John Kurian. And it publishes a wide range of first-rate science, protein science, and I encourage all of you to consider publishing your work there as well. And I also want to just note briefly our next webinar in the theme of the 2024 Nobel Prizes, New Frontiers in Computational Protein Design and Structure Prediction, which will be on May 20th. And with that, I want to come to our main event. So I want to thank the members of our COA, formerly DI committee, Sheila Jaswal, who is serving as the chair of the committee and this webinar, Shannan Cunniffe from the Protein Society, who unfortunately can't be here with us today, Jamaine Davis from Belmont University, Raquel Lieberman from Georgia Tech, and Pernilla Wittung-Stafshede from Chalmers University of Technology. Your dedication and leadership in this committee and this webinar are tremendously important and hugely appreciated. So I want to thank all of you for your work here. I also want to thank the staff of the Protein Society, Shannan and Raquel, our CEO, who are doing a lot of work behind the scenes to bring this webinar to you. So I'm going to give just a brief introduction to Sheila before I turn it over to her for her first presentation today. Sheila obtained her BA in German and biochemistry from Mills College, and then a PhD in biochemistry from the University of California at San Francisco. She then went to Yale University as a Damon Runyon postdoctoral fellow, and then was a Beckman Senior Scientist Fellow, a Senior Research Fellow at Stanford, before taking up a faculty position at Amherst College, where she's a professor in the chemistry department and the program in biophysics and biochemistry, as well as being director of the Being Human in STEM initiative, or HSTEM, which we're going to hear about today, which is to support student success and thriving in STEM. She's also co-authored a book on this topic and is a winner of the Protein Society Carl Brandine Award, which honors outstanding protein scientists who've made exceptional contributions in the area, who've also made exceptional contributions in the area of education and service to the field. I've been inspired by Sheila for many years. Her energy just lights up the room, and she gives us many smart, constructive ways to move forward in science. So thank you. Before I turn it over to her, I have just a couple of logistical notes. So the way we'll do this is each speaker, first Sheila and then Jamaine, will speak for about 15 to 20 minutes. And we'll have questions after that in a town hall, which will be hosted by our committee. So take a moment now to find your Q&A tab, where you can type your questions at any time. Only the organizers and speakers will see the questions, so these don't go to everyone in the webinar. The questions will be read out by Sheila and answered in real time, and some answers might also be typed and then be available in the chat. And your questions are so important, so I want to thank you for joining us and participating and making this webinar even more inclusive and expansive. We really rely on you to share your thoughts and join in the discussion. And with that, I want to turn it over to Sheila.
Okay, thank you, Liz. And I'm going to see about sharing my screen here. Okay. So is that working?
Perfect.
Great. Okay. Thank you. Well, I really want to thank Liz for that kind introduction and thank my colleagues on the committee. I started as chair of the committee back in January of 2024, and it's been quite an exciting time to be working and collaborating with my colleagues, and they've just been a huge support and fantastic in helping think through how to navigate this challenging time. So I would like to start by introducing myself to those who don't know me as a grateful product of and proud member of the Protein Society. So the protein science community has been my scholarly home since I was a graduate student at UCSF, um, a postdoc at Yale, and a research fellow at Stanford University. And really, the Protein Society has been instrumental in my thriving through the ups and downs of my own STEM journey. I have had formal and informal mentors from the protein science community who have given me good feedback at posters, have given me advice about career transitions, edited grants, and sat through practice talks, and importantly, connected with me as a regular human and supported me in all of my endeavors, including navigating my education and career as a queer biracial woman who has not always seen myself represented in the STEM community. I was honored to receive the Carl Brandine Award the same year as my PhD advisor, David Agard, received the Stein and Moore Award. This is David up here. And it was just such an honor and really so touching to be receiving these awards in the same year. And in preparing my plenary talk upon receiving the award, that really enabled me to conceptualize my journey as a protein scientist using this kind of corny funnel terms in parallel to the folding of a protein as shown here on the right side. So this corny yet fun analogy really catalyzed some serious reflection on my part about how this myth of the smooth funnel for proteins is really matched by the myth of the idea that my success ending up as a professor at my dream job is based on a purely merit-based deterministic process, when in fact I had many advantages and privileges that lowered the inherent structural barriers in education and society that enabled me to succeed, in addition to my hard work and support from my community. And so the fact that there are these structural barriers in society means that no field, including the one that I love so much as protein science, is immune to. And so you can dig into my reflections and in this article that I wrote and perhaps find resonance. And I would actually welcome respectful disagreement and challenge to some of my arguments and would love to hear other points of view. One of the points I wanted to make in showing this is that my education, aside from having a second major in German, during my undergraduate really didn't prepare me for much besides doing research and teaching in a chemistry department. And in fact, did nothing special to prepare me as an expert to speak to you today about democratizing protein science. But what has prepared me to step into conversations around inclusion, access, and belonging is my involvement in co-founding and leading a curricular initiative called Being Human in STEM. And if you take nothing else away from my talk today, I think the key is really that as humans in STEM, we really all have the skills and ability to take action to not just democratize protein science, but in this moment, stand up for science, education, and international collaboration that we know so well as protein scientists are critical for us being able to conduct the research and make the advances that are so important. Before telling you about the origin and details of the original Being Human in STEM course and how it has grown into this larger initiative, just want to highlight that the mission of Being Human in STEM is really to empower everyone to reshape their classrooms, labs, and departments in order to create an inclusive and equitable community that enables all humans to thrive and flourish in STEM. And while the HSTEM course has proven to be a flexible and persistent means of keeping the conversation about equity and inclusion in STEM a priority on our campus, importantly, what it has done is provide a structure that keeps student voice at the forefront of the conversation, and it empowers them to be the primary architects of improvements and modifications. But it grounds their efforts in the national context, while providing a structure to partner strategically with campus partners and stakeholders. So these course features enhance the possibility that student-proposed interventions can be effective and sustainable. There are also many activities, participants, events, and resulting resources that have helped establish a broader ethos in the STEM community at Amherst. And it really has enabled HSTEM to serve as a nucleus or hub of campus-wide STEM inclusion activities. Like many transformative movements, HSTEM is a legacy of the efforts and courage of Black women. So in the fall of 2015, 3 sophomores identifying as Black women organized a 1-hour sit-in in solidarity with Black Lives Matter protests on other campuses that were protesting police brutality against Black people. As the students started sharing painful testimonials of their experiences with racism and other forms of oppression on our campus, this 1-hour sit-in transformed into a 4-day occupation of the library. And the courage and honesty of these students telling their stories invited us as a community to show up in a different way than what typically results from campus protest. Over 1,000 faculty, staff, and students showed up and truly listened for hours on end as the students described how navigating Amherst as representatives of diversity without being truly included as their full human selves with their intersecting identities, nor valued for the diversity of their backgrounds, needs, and perspectives, nor empowered with the agency to collaborate in shaping the campus as a space of belonging for all, had broken them. Nearly every department wrote a letter in support, validating what the students shared. As individuals and collectively, we reflected on our unconscious biases and our role in the systems and structures that continue to exclude and alienate certain groups while advantaging others. It was at this moment that the Being Human course model was born, as the 9 students pictured here, whose ringleaders were in my biochemistry class, asked me to partner with them in designing a course that could continue this important campus conversation and momentum. By first investigating the underlying disconnects causing such disparate student experiences of our community, and then using that foundation to propose specific changes to enhance inclusion and equity, specifically in STEM. So how HSTEM works in the classroom is shown with this graphic here, and this backbone of the course has really remained quite consistent over the 14 iterations at Amherst. So we equally value the lived experience of the types of personal narratives that most of us had been sharing and hearing for the first time during the uprising, alongside the academic scholarship that is typically the only evidence that we are conditioned to accept as valid. Using that foundation, then, the students can propose and make change, both through designing specific interventions, but as importantly, through HSTEM salons that lead the conversations on equity and inclusion on our campus through our annual event. And while we didn't plan on it, we were invited during that first semester by Yale to share about our class in that very first semester. And so that led us to realize that a key component of our model is connecting nationally, if not globally, with annual summits with our regional HSTEM neighbors, attending conferences, and giving talks all over. And we learned after that first semester that it's really important to intentionally build community and nurture it throughout the course in order to enable us to have the difficult conversations as we're learning about these issues together. This is a sample of one of the modules where we dive into the experience and the data of being human in STEM. And so these are different articles that we read, and we put those in juxtaposition with the NSF diversity and STEM data in this report has been released annually, although the last one was in 2023, and you're no longer able to access the interactive tables that typically go along with this report. And so this really gives us a chance to do that pairing of lived experience and data to really dig into the experiences, not just of ourselves and those who are like us and our friends and colleagues we know, but of folks from across holding different axes of identity. And so after doing several modules where we dig into literature, the students then propose action projects. And this is just a sample of a couple. Students are very committed to trying to help those coming after them navigate things better at Amherst in STEM and more broadly, and have proposed really innovative and creative ideas for helping students to make the most of their STEM education and make visible some of the hidden curricula that exist in both education and STEM. So last year, the action projects were centered around really going through the evolution of the projects that had been proposed over the past 8 years in the 13 iterations that have happened. And we found that they fell into these categories of really trying to bring some of the ways we do things in the class and approach being a community together, disseminating that beyond just our class on campus, and then also figuring out ways to enhance belonging and thriving. And then a lot of students are very interested in both learning and growing from mentorship by their peers and offering mentorship to underclassmen. And again, as I showed you, accessing and explaining resources is a key area that students often focus on, because despite the many resources that exist, it can be very hard to navigate them. And finally, students have always been interested in this connection with other folks working on inclusion in STEM and connecting with other courses that do similar work. And so I don't know if it's possible on the screen, but you could, if you take a picture of this QR code, it should bring you to a PDF that highlights these projects and gives you access to more of them. So what is surprising and not something that we had planned in the beginning is just how far our course has been, not just replicated here at Amherst, but also propagated across the country. And this chart needs to be updated. It ends in spring of 2022, but we're still going strong. And really, it demonstrates that we've had the goals and the ethos of HSTEM have really resonated with faculty and students at other institutions coast to coast. And so we have public universities like the University of Utah. We've got private research university of Yale. We've got Midwestern institutions, DePauw, Macalester, Hamline, and we've got institutions in the South, Davidson and Sewanee University of the South. And so these QR codes also provide samples of materials from the other network partners. And I want to admit that we haven't had funding to systematically evaluate the course and its ripple effects. And in fact, I was planning to submit this June. The NIH research with attention to diversity to that opportunity, which now is no longer a possibility. And so we don't have the type of quantitative impact following the alumni who are students and faculty and staff in what they've done since participating in the course. But we have some data, and we have a lot of qualitative data. And so at the individual level, as facilitators, I can speak to the impact that having practice with co-learning, with leading with our humanity, collaborating with colleagues in other disciplines. I've co-taught with faculty from music, sociology, philosophy, biology, currently co-teaching with a creative writing scholar. That really has enhanced my ability to understand and respect one another. And it's really kind of a local arena where we can practice reaching across the aisle, so to speak, with folks who have very different passions and approaches to scholarship. And I and others are now more willing to step into difficult conversations and try to lead with curiosity and humility. And in fact, my involvement in this initiative has led to this opportunity to serve the Protein Society by leading our Community Opportunity and Action Committee, and somehow ending up here kicking off our webinar on democratizing protein science. Students holding minoritized identities report feeling validated and empowered, and all students report having their eyes opened to the experiences of others, including the data on who is actually thriving and advancing through our STEM education and career pipeline. And they especially talk about valuing the listening that we practice in class and applying that to other arenas of their lives. In terms of institutional impact, nearly every STEM department has a committee that includes students as leaders in addressing and educating about issues in their department. And all STEM departments still share diversity, equity, inclusion goals on our websites. And a number of the STEM majors have now incorporated a requirement that their majors have to take a course that considers the intersection of science and structural issues of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And this is pretty remarkable for a campus where we have no general education requirements. So I and other H-STEMinists, as we call ourselves, don't claim to be experts or that we have the only or the right way to really approach these issues, but we have found it helpful to build on the scientific approach with an emphasis on heart. So what does that look like? Well, the key ingredient is really, the key ingredient is that curiosity paired with humility, which I think we could use a lot more of in all of our spheres these days. And that we respect the expertise of others in addition to data, and accept that others may experience the same thing very differently, including our classrooms, labs, and institutions. It's important to really take risks while prioritizing respect and recognize that as humans, we are going to make mistakes. And just like in the lab, we don't shy away from trying an experiment that will likely fail. We'd never get anything done if we did that. But we do our best. We then learn from those mistakes. And in the case of mistakes made with other humans, we make amends and get feedback when we get feedback that something we said or did caused pain. Doing this work really requires us to have the courage to offer alternative views and constructive feedback, but do it gracefully. And just like with science, we need to balance passion, desire to learn and grow with sustainability, since this is not a sprint, but a lifelong marathon. And so I just also pointing out here, this cycle here has served me so well in everything, whether it's a conversation or working with collaborators, to really just always start by listening, really validate. That doesn't mean you agree, that just means you heard. Take time to reflect honestly, and then really focus on how to partner rather than how to persuade and run ramshod over folks who have different opinions or approaches than I do. So ideally, everyone can cultivate these practices and tools, and that can lead to having the confidence to create your own lifelong framework and practice to advance equity and inclusion in partnership with others in your community. So we have provided a bunch of resources. Well, we don't have the infrastructure to really do an individualized support of folks who are interested in adapting our materials and resources to their local community. We've got a lot on our website. We've got our books. Here are frameworks that I've been talking about, and I invite you all to explore them and let us know what works for you. And just want to close by acknowledging the huge village of folks who have really helped us to um, sustain and helped me steward this project through the past 9 years. And I want to call out my co-author, Sarah Bennell, who really took me from being an overwhelmed scientist afraid of writing anything about this to actually getting things published and spreading the word. So I will end there. And if there are questions, please go ahead and hold those, and we will have time at the end for you to ask questions of me and Jamaine. And so I'd like to now pass the baton to Jamaine Davis, who's at Belmont University in Tennessee. And Jamaine, I should have asked for your CV so that I could call out all of the many wonderful things you've done. But in my view, selfishly, you've been such a partner in this work, and really working tirelessly to make sure that our Community Opportunity and Action Committee is doing right by our community members. With that, take it away, and I'll look forward to hearing your talk.
Excellent. Thank you, Sheila. I'm really excited to be here. And despite the challenging times that we are going through, I think it's even more exciting to hear about particularly the work that you've done on your campus and the students have done. And what really excites me is the energy that students display, not only the energy, the intelligence, as well as the power that they display in becoming change agents when they're supported by their community. I think it's really an important time as well because I found that in my talks and travels to different campuses that there's a large number of students who are participating in community outreach and engagement type activities. And so what I'm going to talk to you about today is aligned with public trust and establishing and maintaining public trust. Because I think that as basic scientists, as protein scientists, we don't always see the impact of our work in our communities. A lot of times we're communicating science to other scientists, but community outreach and engagement is a really powerful way to interact with communities across the world, to really actually understand not only the discoveries that we make, but the process of research. So today I thought I would start off by talking about how outreach is different from engagement. So one of the key aspects of outreach is that it's a one-way process. So many students I've learned have gone out and done science fairs, as participated as judges, did some sort of uh, um, uh, uh, teaching and mentoring to students in junior and like high school, and also found ways to kind of raise awareness of STEM and the STEM fields. So this is a really interesting time because the more outreach we have and the more touch points that we have with engaging or reaching out to the community, the more informed we are, or the more informed our community can be in understanding protein science overall, as well as the research process. Now, community engagement is a bit different. This is a two-way process. And so that means this bidirection means that you have to maintain trust in each party, as well as starting with a foundation of building a relationship. And we know that relationships take time to foster and grow. So this is a long-term commitment. And what we've seen in the fields in social sciences as it relates to biological sciences is that this interaction can actually lead to improved health outcomes. So to do in community engagement, it has to be really focused and integrated with community at the table, really at the onset, and developing precise roles for what the community can do, as well as what the researcher can do, to really maintain kind of expectations and trust. Key examples of this would be frequent town halls, as well as community advisory boards, as well as engaging the community in making key decisions in some of the research aspects that we do. So one of the key kind of revelations I had in starting my lab was this clip. Hopefully it'll play, but it's not playing. And I actually went too fast to the punchline. Is, in the movie Contagion, it was really exciting to see outside of the lab and in the movie this protein structure. If you remember the movie Contagion, a person was infected with the virus, traveled on a plane, spread it to the entire plane, and that went off and spread it out across the world. And lo and behold, we actually lived through this type of experience with the COVID-19 pandemic. And so what I generally like to say is because we can see, because of the ability of these proteins and protein models to have visualization of what happens inside the cell, this was a good way, an initial way to kind of inform the public of how treatments are made. And we know that by looking at the interaction of the viral part of protein with the human receptor, in the movie, they were able to design a treatment or a vaccine that would prevent this interaction. This seems a lot easy and simple for us to understand, but it's not always clear and easy for the public to understand. So it's important for us to develop ways to actually engage with community, or at least demonstrate the power of science to our communities. And that's been a big kind of impulse for me, as a researcher, as a Black man, as a Black person who experience health disparities in different areas. How do we show up our authentic selves and actually use the power of science to communicate how the treatments and advances in medicine can actually help our communities? So we know that there's this precision health initiative where we design the right treatment for the right person at the right dose at the right time. Also, kind of aligned with precision medicine and personalized medicine. So these terms overall, if you ask a different person, you may get a different answer. But overall, it's really designed to make more effective treatments. Now, we know a lot about the way disease develops, but we don't know all the ways the disease develops because we don't have representation from everyone in the community or in society. And we don't have all representation of all these populations because public trust in science and scientists has been diminishing consistently since COVID. And in some populations, there was very little trust to begin with. And so Pew did a study where they showed that the uh, uh, um, uh, trust in science and scientists has diminished over time since COVID. But we really need trust, public trust in science in order to really enhance clinical trial research to really make it representative of society. And so this is an aspect that I thought, well, um, can we use basic science as a way to build trust in communities that will lead to increased intention of clinical trial participation um, as a first step that will ultimately lead to clinical trial participation enrollment? And to do this, we actually need to think about this translational research spectrum. So we know that translational research, it starts with basic science and has all these phases that go through, which ultimately kind of goes back into the community. But what we're starting to see, or at least think about, is maybe community engagement needs to be incorporated throughout the entire spectrum. And so, as just before COVID, I participated in a few community outreach event or engagement events. One of them was an African Male Cancer Symposium. And this was facilitated by a community engagement researcher and a community partner, Dr. Jennifer Ers and Miss Lenise Campbell. So what they provided was a platform or forum for me to show up and to talk about kind of the fundamental mechanisms, an area that I'm an expert in, to address cancer or why people develop cancer. And this interaction with the community was truly transformative because how many times does the community actually get to ask these questions about how disease develops? Not all physicians, their primary first line of interaction or information would be primary care physicians, which are not always forthcoming or easy to talk to about these questions. So in this forum, it was interesting to see how the public was able to open up, talk about some health-related issues, and the importance of talking about it to spread awareness, particularly in the African American male symposium, because of all the stigmas associated with males and medicine. So it was an opportunity that really transcended my understanding of how social sciences can actually impact the biological sciences in terms of overall health. After that, I participated in a research spotlight on a radio segment at the FIS radio station. This actually was in March 5th, I think maybe a week or so before COVID-19 was declared a pandemic. And this was also kind of an interesting aspect of how do we reach community? So in this radio segment, I was there to talk about the initial work that I was doing in cancer. But because of the impending pandemic, most questions started to focus around COVID-19 and vaccine and the virus. And we had a lot of questions, meaning that there was a lot of public interest in understanding pandemics as well as viruses. So the way we disseminate information or the touch points that we have to engage with community can have a really important impact for improving improving some preventative measures as well as improving overall health outcomes. And so this is an area of dissemination and implementation science. We can actually convey information to the public to help inform the public of discoveries in the basic sciences as well as the social sciences that will ultimately lead to improved health in communities. And what we saw in terms of the COVID-19 pandemic is that it revealed a pandemic of inequality. Not everyone could socially distance. many families had multiple generations living in one house, so it was hard to isolate. People were just not clear on what personal protective equipment, how to use it. So it kind of exacerbated some of the existing health disparities that we already saw in many areas. So my initial having this kind of initial introduction into how to engage with community, I partnered with Dr. Jennifer Irves, who was also at Meharry, and we implemented this social marketing campaign to address COVID vaccine hesitancy among African Americans and Latinos because these were the communities that were being more hit heavily in Davidson County. And so we did a series of surveys. So this is where the social sciences come in, where we did a series of surveys to understand perspectives of what research is, as well as the virus and vaccine, and other aspects of overall health from the understanding from the perspective of the community, and emerge in a few of these themes, which I won't go into too detail. But some of the materials that we created for for this social marketing campaign were materials that reflected distinct communities. So we had to listen to community leaders to inform us what are the ways that would be responsive and culturally appropriate to address vaccine hesitancy, because oftentimes researchers go into communities thinking they know more and they're smarter than the communities, and they use language that puts up barriers and actually leads to distrust. So a key part of this campaign was to really listen as Sheila has mentioned in kind of her experience and her background in democratizing science, listen and actually reflect, and then actually partner with community members, just as she outlined, so that we get the right representation and terminology that would not deter people from our campaign or from understanding that vaccines are important and safe. As you may remember, there were a lot of conspiracy theories and misinformation and disinformation about the virus and the vaccine. Like, it's made from RNA, so it's gonna mess up my DNA. So we had to collectively listen to those concerns and address them logically with evidence so that it would help alleviate these concerns with the community. So we enlisted the help with various partners, community partners displayed in these two kind of tables. And the number on the right represents their constituent group or the constituents in these groups. So we had a wide range of or wide reach or impact. So some of the things that we've learned, I'm cutting short in the interest of time, but some of the things that we learned from this is that people want to understand the science. It must be simple with clear explanations. Actually, has to make logical sense. And people want this information from trusted and reliable sources. And scientists across the translational continuum must collaborate to understand and meet the needs of the community. So this leads me into kind of the areas that I'm looking at in my lab, what I hope to do, or the impact I hope to make. And we know that there are these social and economic determinants of health that can drive health disparities. We're also finding that there are key biological determinants as well, things that are related to ancestry, like variance, race, sex, and age, but also how we interact with our environment, including our diet and exercise. And so this has been a major part of the precision medicine initiative sponsored through the All of Us research program at NIH, which hopes to or aims to look at our genotype and make predictions about our phenotype. But with all these variations, how do we actually achieve precision medicine for all? And we have to actually think about that there are different ways for disease develops. And in this case study, we see that genetic variants are not always equal. So this case study presented about this BRCA1 mutation identified in identical twins showed that one twin developed breast cancer, while the second twin never developed breast cancer but suffered from seizures. If we would looked at just the genotype, we would have predicted that both would have developed cancer. But we see that that this was not the case. And the logical explanation for this is that the experience or interactions with the environment may have shifted or determined the different phenotype. So I became interested in understanding how this genetic variation can lead to such different phenotypes. To do this, we're looking more so at the protein level, right? How the protein science can influence these phenotypes. But we're actually looking at it across various scales. So we're primarily interested in what happens on the atomic level. You know, what happens with the protein structure? How do these genetic variations lead to protein variants that may alter different protein-protein interactions that lead to pathways that either go to, in one case, a healthy brain depicted by this image here, or severe disease brain like Alzheimer's depicted here. So there are key questions that we need to ask at every level, but also on the community level. Obviously, we know that there's a lot of science in the cellular, tissue, and organism level, but how does the community level work, or how do we integrate that into the understanding of this disease, and to ensure that everyone benefits from these discoveries? This is important because, as I mentioned, clinical trial participation is really important. However, most clinical trials are still a majority of white patients, particularly for diseases that disproportionately affect minoritized individuals. A recent drug that was recently by Biogen that was ultimately taken out of the FDA approval was Biogen's Endohem, and this clinical trial had 89% non-Hispanic white participants, 9% Asian, and 2% other. So this begs the question of, can we really generalize these drugs, knowing that there are different ways that the disease develops, and we know that there are different ways that treatments work with different backgrounds of patients. Can we really generalize these drugs without this diverse clinical trial information? So we really need to find ways to increase the diversity of clinical trial participation. And one way that we're doing this is by understanding some of the aspects of Alzheimer's disease. So we know that the ApoE protein, or mutations in ApoE, particularly the ApoE4 variant, is the strongest genetic risk factor in Alzheimer's. We're starting to see new genetic risk factors emerge. One particular one is this ABCA ATP binding cassette protein called APCA7 that actually works to deliver lipids to ApoE in the brain. Mutations, particularly in the extracellular domain of this transporter, have been demonstrated to confer risk for developing Alzheimer's. And some are distinctive and only found in the African American population. So one particular mutation is a substitution from a histidine to an arginine that may impact which lipids or what type of lipids are being transported out of the cell. This is important because lipid transport can influence the hallmarks of cancer, such as in increasing the beta amyloid plaque formation inside the cells that would lead to dying neurons, that would actually lead to severe cases of Alzheimer's disease. So it becomes important to enroll people in clinical trials with these type of variations so that we can understand the different ways that disease develops, as well as understanding identifying new treatments. And so part of what we want to understand is how these missense variants confer risk in African Americans. We know that APCA7 dysfunction leads to an imbalance in lipid levels that can increase amyloid, the risk of developing Alzheimer's disease. But what's interesting is that there are these different variants located within the extracellular domain. I highlighted, colored in red, and we want to understand how they impact lipid transport. Our hypothesis is that there may be differences in which lipids are transported out that would influence the lipid levels. So this is a bit out of order. So what we've been doing is actually engaging with the community to talk about some of the discoveries and things that we've made. And I've also established a community advisory board to help disseminate some of that information. And one of them being Pam Cowley, who's actually a community outreach and engagement manager at the Vanderbilt Memory and Alzheimer's Center. So we discuss perspectives of what the community wants and what information they would like to learn. And we develop different programs and activities to meet those needs. One of the key things that we've done last year was we thought about, well, what's a great way to not only show representation of Black neuroscientists, but also to engage the public in understanding memory, dementia, and diseases that neurological diseases that disproportionately affect the African American communities. So we partnered with a local church in Chicago because that's where the Society of Neuroscience meeting was. And we had a series of meetings and we asked what would get people out and how do we share the information. The community members spoke. They said that the people in the congregation don't come out unless there's something dealing with the kids. And so with a really helpful team, we came up with this idea of a brain carnival. This was held one day before the Society for Neuroscience. About 160 community members attended. We partnered with the Rush Center, Alzheimer's Center, and they provided memory screenings. And these memory screenings help people understand their risk for developing dementia. And obviously, you have to be a certain age for these community screenings, but we conducted 11 memory screenings for the people who qualified. And we also partnered with the Black and Neuro Society so that we were able to bring researchers who were already in the area to talk about different diseases and ailments such as stroke, post-traumatic stress disorder, as well as Alzheimer's. And again, these are the topics that were selected by the community. We actually had then short information sessions that lasted 10 to 20 minutes about each of these ailments, the stroke, Alzheimer's, and post-traumatic stress disorder. And people had really interesting questions that they needed answers to that they didn't always have the resources for. We also provided resources for the attendees in those areas. The Alzheimer's Center, the chapter in Chicago, participated, as well as other community members and organizations to provide resources. So we are writing this up as a publication, and hopefully some best practices and things that could come out of it. But we're also this publication will also partnership will be shared by the community members because they also contributed to the activity and to the study. And it's important to understand that the public can be viable authors and participants in some of these studies. And it's important to share that or inform them of that at the onset, which we did. And so lastly, I think, and so these are just some pictures from the different events. So we had different activities for the kids, the memory screening, and also types of resources. And it was a really, we actually also had, brains from the Harvard Tissue Bank and so forth. So I believe we provided a really nice platform to talk about the um, uh, uh, um, different discoveries and aspects of neurological disorders. And so there's no real established framework for this as yet, but this actually needs to be done in a intentional way. So training as a basic scientist, we talk to our families, I'm sure, about what the work we do. Some of them may understand and understand what we do. Some of them may not, but we really need to learn how to use the right terminology to talk about what we do about protein science to the community. Um, I make the joke that even though um, the public knows about genes because that's been in the news and described very well, but we know that the genes get all the credit and recognition, but the proteins do all the work. So we really have to make a better find a better way to articulate the importance of proteins and protein machines. So training is really important. Um, Establishing, so this is, if you want to get engaged in kind of community engagement, establish a diverse team, look at things from different aspects. Again, people across the translational spectrum can help. Assess the needs of the community, um, uh, develop dissemination tools at the beginning, and include, in some cases, community advisory boards and members at the beginning of the research so they can take ownership in it. And so lastly, impact of community engagement is profound and significant, more knowledgeable public, increased trust, awareness in clinical trials and benefits, as well as improved health outcomes and reductions in health and health disparities. So on that note, I will end, and I think we will go into our town hall portion.
Yes. So, can you see me?
I can see you, yes.
Great. So I just wanted to quickly, I don't know if, all right, so all of our committee members are here. I know Raquel has to run off to another obligation supporting students in a defense, but we've got you for a few more minutes. And so so I just wanted to first thank you, Jamaine, for illustrating such a I think it's really neat the way you're coming in and talking about engaging with community outside of academia really kind of extends the idea that my students and I were starting with, which was like, let's understand and meet each other as humans and really listen and validate each other's experiences and try to partner to make things better in our own community, while you are taking those same principles into the broader community and really with a spirit of reciprocity and humility. I think that you have a need for and a respect for really listening to what the community needs are, and it's up to you as the scientist to really meet them where they are and be as invitational as you can. So I was just really struck by that. That's more of a comment, but
Thank you for that. I do see Raquel has a question that I will address. Thanks, Raquel. Um, and so Raquel's question is, how do you get started? What's the first step? So community engagement, it depends on what your objective is. If you want to increase awareness, a one-time outreach might be might be great. But if you want to engage and develop a relationship, simply just attending meetings or church gatherings, because you want to get to know the community, right? You want to you want to be a welcome visitor in the community and understand and then make that assessment of what the community, how they think or how they perceive research and medicine overall. Um, so I would say that you can start one by just defining what it is you want. If you want to establish and maintain a relationship with a community or a church, then it will take a process of developing that relationship over time. Now, you bring up a really relatively difficult type of question about um, uh, um, the reliance on religion and God versus science. And so that's a touchy one to go through in a short time. But um, I think that one thing that you have to remember, and I say this based on my experience with the COVID pandemic, is you're not there to convince anyone of anything. You're there to convey information for them to make whatever decisions they want to make about their health. And I think that that's been a difficult task over the past few years because we know how important vaccines and the spread of diseases or the importance of stopping the spread of diseases. But we're not always good in human behavior. I know that even though Raquel, you're a great friend, I appreciate and love you, but if you tell me I can't do something, that's going to create some tension. Right. I don't know what it is, but I know that's a limitation that when you hear you cannot do this, you see how your disposition changes. And we need to approach this the same way because we can't go into communities saying what they cannot do, but we can go in and say what they can do. And what we did with COVID was say, we know that traveling for the holidays is important, but remember that you can actually spread, if you must travel, it would be great if you use a mask, wear a mask, or try to social distance as much as possible. Because we have to think about how the public is receiving the information as well. And if we're not sensitive to that, then we automatically lose trust.
Yeah. I mean, I get the sense that my students who go to regular Bible study at their church actually can't bring their full selves to that environment. And, it's not so much about like what I might bring to this community, but what they can do. And if they can't bring their full selves, and share their experiences, like how do we, maybe that's not the right place to start, right? Like, but yeah, I
Well,
mean, I just feel like that's even, that's another layer of all of this, as
yeah,
well.
that is another layer. I think small discussions, but the open honesty and transparency is important. And in some cases, for students, it might be difficult because it's hard to kind of articulate some of the things because they're still trainees themselves. Um, but I think that they can use it as a learning experience to understand obviously the needs and the needs and the perspectives of their community. But just displaying why they're interested in science, right? Like what attracted them to science overall, and maybe even sharing how do they separate the two, and if so, how? So not always easy conversations, but if we approach them with respect, I think that it can lead to more complex discussions. Um, I've had some with my family as well, some that didn't want the vaccine, but yeah, the benefit of that is I could say what I want and we still love each other, um, but I respected their opinion and decision not to get it.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that, and I forgot to, I was supposed to, sorry, Liz, I was supposed to introduce not just Raquel Lieberman, who's from Georgia Tech, but Pernilla Wittung, who's from Chalmers University in Sweden, and we've really valued your participation as an international member of our committee, enhancing the perspectives. So I see that you've got a question in there, but I wanted to remedy the lack of official introduction.
No, thank you. Thank you for having me here. And it's good. I mean, we're all in this committee, and I haven't done these great things. Both of you have done really amazing things here, right? That are really persistent and over, I mean, longer periods and then repeated. I think this is wonderful examples. I've done outreach. I go speak to kids in high school, or I talk about, you know, for people at a cafe, or I, you know, try to encourage kids to do STEM. And I've been doing a lot of gender equality, which is a different thing where you can, you know, kind of relates to what you're talking about, that you need to do a bunch of different things in order to get somewhere. But I wanted to ask you one thing. I mean, I have questions for both of you, but I'll start. But people who are listening, we can't see you, but please post your questions. Now is your chance. I mean, about anything related to the bad situation. I mean, these are great efforts, but we need to do them more now because the situation is kind of dire. Sheila, how many students did you have in your courses? I mean, were there only a few, or were they only first years or seniors, or like, you know, what was the kind of composition of your classes?
Great question. So the first class was made up primarily of juniors and seniors, and they were really fired up from the protests. There were 9 of them, and they were going to change everything about Amherst in one semester. And they did do a lot. They got the website going. They interviewed 40 different students and alumni to get a, you know, a sense of the experiences and what had supported people in feeling belonging, et cetera. And so that was the initial class. And then I was on sabbatical the following year, so I kept a few of them who wanted to continue with 3 one semester, 4 the other. But then when we came back from sabbatical, we had 18, and we realized we had to kind of adapt how we were doing things. And then during the pandemic was similar time when the departments decided that they wanted to, kind of in response to students, many of them alums from having taken HSTEM, put pressure on the departments. Let's do something to really help everybody engage with these issues more. And so that was when some of these DEI requirements went in. And so over the virtual J term, we had 50 students. That's when I recruited other folks to help me teach. And so we've kind of, that was our biggest. We did it through 3 cohorts, and then this past semester we've been back to 18. And so, yeah, it does work well when you can have those more challenging, and the building community part is really critical. And yeah, so but what's been promising to me is the way that it's been adopted at all these other institutions, and really with just people who have decided, oh, this sounds great, let me give it a try. And I think, you know, there's a balance between, you know, Jamaine was talking about really, you know, getting training to be able to work well with community partners. And I know a lot of us are a little bit, you know, not sure that we have the training. We don't have the specific training to engage around these issues as scientists. However, I think we do have, this is what I always say, like, we do have the training to be the, you know, the most imperfect humans that we are. And so the more we can model that, and model how you make mistakes and recover from them, how you own ignorance you have, misgendering someone and then, apologizing, moving on. I've had a huge blind spot around disability, which even saying blind spot is maybe like that's been an area that I haven't had awareness around. And so I think just modeling that we all need, it's kind of we can't wait till we all get degrees in women's and Black studies to talk about these issues. And we have to be willing then to be not the experts that I think in science we've been so honed, so used to. You develop as an expert and you're given that authority, and it's important as teachers in the classroom to have authority. And maybe this is what we've been doing, and this is where we're at now. Wow, look at what's happening. Like already in COVID, Jamaine seeing the need, had developed a whole program of community engagement. What we've been doing has not been able to withstand the attacks that are coming right now. And so we got to shake it. We got to do things differently. And I think people like me, full professor, tenured, we also have to recognize that like lifelong job security, or even the 7-year pre-tenure job security, is something that no one else in the US at least has. And so recognizing that is a privilege, and really having some humility around that, that it isn't necessarily our entitlement to just do our science and not have to think about politics. It's our responsibility to do our science for the good of the community, as Jamaine has said, make sure everyone can access pathways into science, and then to make sure that we're getting the message out there and doing what we need to stand up for not just our own NIH, NSF grants, but also the most marginalized who now don't have health care and are being attacked. And so I think that's part of all what it means right now to be in science. Liz.
I have a question, maybe a comment and then a question. So these presentations, I think, gave such wonderful examples of the different ways that we can try to do this work of community engagement and supporting our community. I think it can be really hard and scary to know how to start, right? I know that's true for me, and I think it's true for many. And I think I wanted to ask all of you, like, what was the biggest thing that helped you to figure out how you can do this hard work? Like, even to start, like for me, I had to be very quiet at first. I had to just go and listen a little bit before I could even then think about how would I do something? How would I do something? Right? So what helped you the most in getting there? Because, one can look at other people and go, wow, they can do that. I can't do that. Right? And it's a journey. So what helped you to do your journey? What would help others too? I think it will inspire people.
I'll start if you don't mind. I think it was my family, right? Like, us, knowing, COVID, it was a different time, but I think we're all motivated by, providing for our families, and, giving them the resources and things that they need to survive and do well, right? And so my start has been my family, but it also then branched out into my community, right? Like people who don't live in my household, or, who are not immediate family, I still have some concern about, okay, well, you may think that way, but, particularly in the context of COVID, that you can die. We just can't predict who will be okay and who won't be okay, right? And so I recognize this knowledge gap that I thought was really, straightforward enough to kind of address. And I went in, just wanting to convey information again, and not trying to change people's mind or try to think that I'm smarter than anyone, but just say, hey, yeah, but that's not how it works. Because not everyone has access to an MD or PhD or some specialist that they can always call up. So mine has always been kind of my family's well-being. you know, what information can I share with them to help them make their decision?
And I'll say, you know, for me, it was definitely recognizing that these students were out there kind of really sharing these painful testimonials about that, you know, what we thought we thought that we were making these classrooms for everyone to learn and thrive, and it clearly wasn't the case. And you know, kind of this idea that if someone isn't experiencing what my intent is, that doesn't mean I'm a bad person, but it does mean that the impact is not what I want it to be. And then rather than like fight about being right, well, this is what I'm intended, and you should just like stop and take a step back and really lead with the curiosity and the listening. And I think, Liz, you mentioned that, you know, you wanted to listen and think first. And I think that's hugely important. That, you know, the problem with a lot of us is we get fired up about something. We say, we need to change this. And this is what the students were trying to do in my class in the first semester. We need to change this, and this has to happen. But you gotta listen and reflect and really look around and know the landscape and recognize that this is you know, yes, this is a dire time, but we're here because of people who worked and sacrificed and stood up for generations before us. Maybe not, you know, like my dad will say, Sheila, we fought the British, or, you know, we overcame the British without, and my mom will say, you know, Midwesterner, like, well, not everybody likes to talk about feelings. And, you know, so there's like just so many different ways that we're drawing on to move forward. And so I think that's a long answer to say that I think there's a developmental arc for all of us in everything that we're learning and doing, including this kind of work. And then I think we're planting seeds. You can't know what's going to actually flourish and who's going to be impacted by what they hear during this webinar, or how much it means to someone, you know, if a straight person stands up when somebody's making a slur or assumptions about a queer person. Or like, I think that's also a message I'd like to get out there, that those of us who have privilege in any way, if you look around the room and you are not the person who's under attack, that's a great place to say something, even if it's doesn't come out right, even if it's not, to just speak up in some way. And that's going to make a huge difference to people in the room who hold identities, who aren't being, you know, who are kind of being left out to hang out to dry. But I want to go to Pernilla, because I know you've done so much in the arena of gender equality.
Yeah, and I thought about why did I start to do that, and it was really, I think my reason was I became angry. Because I moved back from the US to Sweden, and this was a long time ago, and I thought, like, you all think that Sweden would be perfect and we would be ahead of everybody in terms of gender equality. And maybe we're ahead in many ways, we are, but I saw that we had got stuck on some level that was not, you know, good enough. I mean, there was all these problems that you see all over the place, except that we had, you know, childcare and we had some parental leave and stuff. So that kind of built up that I felt like we need to do something. I mean, people are too happy with like rather good. And I didn't see anybody doing anything. I mean, I couldn't rely on anybody. So in the end, there was an opportunity to get funding for this. And then I just felt I had to do it. It was scary because, I mean, I put in almost half my time over 4 years in this. So my research was suffering. And I mean, I was scared about my grants, about the future. I mean, because you're valued for your research anyway. But I just felt like, I guess I was driven enough that I thought I could make a difference. It was kind of, you felt the power, and we were a few of us. I think this is a key point too. Don't do things alone. I mean, try to bring in a few others so you have people to share with. In my case, we were 3 women, yeah, mostly women, but the 3 of us, we were the best team, and we really supported each other, because it was a lot of, you know, bad days, a lot of bad things happening, a lot of walls that you hit. But I mean, I think that we seeded something. I might not be exactly happy with all the outcomes, but in the end, we changed something. We changed the culture of people, and that's the beginning of something. But you can only do certain things for so long, I think also. So I think it's important to think that you do things, then you might take a break, and that's okay too. And other people can do things, and you know, you don't have to do it all the time. I mean, you mentioned, Sheila, you have tenure, and I mean, that's, I guess, what many people listening think about. How much time can you put into this, right? It takes a lot of time if you want to develop a course or, like, you know, go out to the community. Is that valued when you're being evaluated for tenure or promotion or whatever? That was some comments, but maybe you can actually say something about that.
Well, I mean, I think that's another place where, and maybe Liz could speak to this, where, you know, as we get to be, I hate to say it, but elders in our
Yeah.
community, you know, like, what, maybe it's up to us to also like really change what is being valued, because
Well,
it's not working. I mean, that's what I just keep coming back to. If we were valuing the right things, then science would be working. Science couldn't be broken in 100 days. You know, like you, so, and scientists would be able to, you know, would not feel so helpless and bewildered. And I think, you know, so let's look at the data, people. You know,
Mhm.
are we, if we, by putting all of our whatever you call it in one pot, what is that, putting all of your eggs in one basket?
Mhm.
Was just Easter. No matter how colorful they are in the same basket of like just, you know, so-called research excellence and this competitiveness to get grants for so many people, you know, kind of trying to scoop each other, doing all the same stuff. When if we would have like spread out to science communication, really engaging the community and having robust ways of demonstrating the public good that we're doing. I think we have gotten away from that because the system is set up to recognize and value individual achievement in this very, you know, Western Enlightenment way. And there are alternative ways to do things, which I've learned a lot about through teaching Being Human in STEM. Pernilla.
I think you're onto something, really. I think academia or how we do science today, it's about to crash. I mean, something has to happen. We need to do it in new ways and think more about teams who work, you know, what we value. And we are, you know, tiny steps here in Sweden. We are trying to kind of reframe what do we value in people's research. But it's really hard to come to this about teamwork and who contributes pieces here and there, because in the end, what's your CV, right? Should we have more service on the CV? I mean, it's two small steps, I feel, within the same frame as we have today. We just add on a few more pieces. I don't know what the solution is, but to me, it feels like I mean, publications, journals, I mean, there's so many things that are just crazy now, and it's going, it feels like something must happen. And I mean, it's no point to just wait. We better push it in the right direction ourselves.
Liz. Yeah, Liz.
I mean, I think everything that all of you are saying is, to me, so inspiring and gives me food for thought, right? Because the way I see this is, right, it's about learning, right? Life keeps changing. It doesn't stay still. There's a million new things coming, and we can always work to get things better. And sometimes we need to be angry or sad or something to galvanize us to move. And then, you know, you kind of, I swing back to, but you know, we have come a long way, right? And I appreciate all of you so much, and our audience, for being here. You know, it makes me feel like I'm not alone. And it's like, you know, I think I just think about, like, it's a journey, right? It's the thing I didn't know when I was young. It's a journey. It keeps changing all the time, which is wonderful. Also terrifying, right? Something new comes and you go, oh, oh, I'm going to be in this webinar, right? I'm going to say something, right? You know,
Yeah.
it's just getting brave enough to get there, right? But I learn as I go. Everyone learns as they go. And then we find the thing that we feel we can do, right? And then the new things come. And, you know, we're groupish. We're people, we want to, you know, we can build a better society. We can do better. And so I have over time, like my interests have certainly changed over time very much. And now I do think about structural things and I think about organizations more than I did when I was younger. I didn't even know how the organizations were supporting me initially. The Protein Society did in so many ways. It was my home when I felt like I didn't belong anywhere else, you know? So it's like you find your people. And I think the point about starting also with family, that was so huge for me, has always been huge for me. The people that I care about, that's where you can feel like you have that relationship and then start to help in some way. And then maybe that grows into something else. So I just think it's wonderful that we're all here. And I think it's wonderful what protein science has done for our world and will continue to do. And, you know, even these difficult conversations. So for me, the work around community and belonging has been some of the most challenging work I've done. That's where I've been challenged the most, actually, or just as much as in science, because it's so hard to stay sometimes and hear what people are saying and understand it. It's such hard work, but it's also such rewarding work. It's the best to connect with all of you and to learn. So yeah, so I don't feel done at all. I feel so far from done, right? And I'm so grateful because I get energy from all of you and from all the gifts that I've been given. So yeah, so thank you.
Jamaine, were you going to jump in there?
Not necessarily. I mean, I do. There are some key points that I think maybe emphasize to what Liz and Pernilla were saying. And I think we've all experienced those same issues for different reasons, right? Like we have different reasons we were brought to this space today, but I think we all experienced all the same things. And so now we're at a point, so what do we do now? Right. And I think that that's the critical thing. So we hear all these stories and we're all really inspired, I think, in various ways. So one of the questions is what do we value? Um, and that could be determined, that could be from the context of our, our jobs, as well as what we bring to our jobs or the outcomes of our jobs. So I think my value is, how you started out, Sheila, humans, right? Like, I didn't want to be a physician, but I wanted to contribute to the well-being of society and in the health context. And that means that, and for me, that means that um, life is important no matter who it is, who it is. And so I think what I've learned and what we're seeing, and I think even from what we're experiencing or hearing from others' experience is that, yeah, we're not alone. Right? It's just, it seems like society has divided us to make us feel alone. But we're not alone because we share the same type of experience, emotions, and impulses to improve society. But whatever being, the forces that at B seem to um, separate us and keep us kind of divided, right? And so I think the first step is what we're doing here is how do we build and strengthen our own community, right? And part of that is being able to have these difficult discussions, right? Because it adds another layer of who we are as an organization and society and respecting each other for these differences. But we also need to be strategic, right? So what is a community and what is a strong community? Right. And what does that mean for each of us? Well, for me, you come for one, you come for all. Right. So if there are attacks on one person or one member of our community, we should be knowledgeable to actually defend that person and that person's perspective. or that community perspective. So we need to think about how do we do that, right? Because this is not the end. This is kind of unfortunately the beginning. And we're learning from the experience in real time. But how do we do it so that, after at the end of the day, all our efforts are not swiped away with just one clean swoop, right? And so building this community and maintaining this community is really important. And Protein Society has been a really integral part of my career and training in a variety of ways, in a variety of people and influences. And so being able to show up um and display the other parts of me makes it even that much more fulfilling and rewarding, right? Like it separates you from Protein Society is separate from all the other organizations because I don't have the ability to do that.
Hmm.
So I think that knowing this and just being able to provide this platform is differentiating um, lifelong learning as well as lifelong membership in some ways because you want to be recognized for who you are and appreciated in whatever that is and if we can do that for our community then it's really empowering and inspiring and hopefully sustaining, right? So I know that anytime I attend a Protein Society meeting, I'm going to have a great time, learn a lot of great things, and meet a lot of great friends.
Yes. Well, Pernilla.
I thought about something because I was thinking we talk about this big picture and what we should do and could do, and this is the future, long term. We need to go out in the community. We need to include everybody. But bringing it back to today or like the situation now, so it's really bad times right now, and people are losing funding, and people are laid off, and people don't know if they should stay in science. What do we think, as in you, what can we do as a society to kind of help the people out there that might be listening and think that, I don't know what can we do or what can we help people with? I mean, we have resources on our website, right?
Well, and I think, one immediate thing is like Liz said at the beginning, that we do have funding to help people get to our symposium this summer. And so, just from the point of view of that experiencing the community, knowing you're not alone and being together with people who can help think about next steps, I do have to admit that I am not necessarily the most strategic thinker. And, I kind of was ready, the right person, the right time for the being human and STEM stuff, and then was able to keep it going. But, I've gotten one grant for that and probably never will again. But I think, yeah, we need the strategic thinkers who are willing to share their thoughts and help come up with tangible things we can do. I think another I would point people to the newsletters that come out. Those actually have very great talking points. The article that was in the February newsletter about the facts around indirects, I think that is great for talking with people, clearing up misconceptions. I think also Chuck Sanders, our former president, who shared his speech he gave at the Stand Up for Science rally in Tennessee. That also has a great cheat sheet for what science does and just having those conversations. I was at a reunion with 8 other women who started grad school in the same cohort at the beginning of April, and we went to the rally, Hands Off rally, together in New Haven, Connecticut. And one of my friends was so masterful in engaging our Lyft driver around, who was not supportive of what we were doing and just very curious. So, tell me more about that. Okay. And just like, so I think, not thinking the only difference we can make is through these big sweeping things, but also, you know, our daily interactions and our listening. And just, I think Jamaine said, like, you know, really showing up as our authentic selves as opposed to our authoritative expert selves, in all scenarios will really help to regain trust and build relationships. I think building relationships, I don't know what the strategy is for long term for that, but
One thing I would comment on that, I think the underlying thing is to disrupt the system, right? Because I think, you know, that actually was the same. So we want, you know, we're trained to think we want major impact to reach as many people as possible, one drug to fit everything in some ways. But when you bring this up and about the Lyft driver, it was the same thing with COVID in a sense, because you know we wanted everyone, but sometimes it was okay to do one at a time, right? We don't think that that's efficient, but it actually works. And so having those little small conversations one-on-one can be helpful, and then it may lead to that exponential growth. And I say that because my brother had questions about the vaccine, and I spoke to him about it, and obviously he trusts me most times. And then he told his coworkers. So he got the vaccine, and then his coworker said, "Well, why did you get the vaccine?" And so he started talking about, so two of his coworkers got the vaccine because of this trust and interaction and discussion. So sometimes that's okay. But again, it's kind of going back to the idea of parts of the system need to change, and we need to figure out what's going to do that to maximize benefit for everyone.
and I think like consistent reflection to say what is working, you know, what is the impact we're having, and
And it's okay that my method doesn't work in your area. Like, you know, it's okay to have different methods, different messages, and different methods.
well, I want to thank our audience members who have hung in there so long. And if you have any burning question, we're here for you. Just drop it in the Q&A. It's too bad we're not, you know, in the webinar format. I can't like reveal everybody all at once like I used to do with my students in the virtual classrooms. But we really appreciate you listening and thinking along with us, and we'll be happy to have you share your thoughts in any format that you would like, even after the fact, if something strikes you. But in the meantime, I think I will see if anybody has one last thought to leave us with.
Oh, you put us on the spot, Sheila.
Well, that's also, you know, like normally I would say, well, you know, I want to make sure anybody who hasn't had a chance to speak up can do so, but we've all done a great job in this town hall session of speaking and having a great conversation. So
Well, I would welcome anyone to contact me either through Protein Society or in my new position at Belmont University. I'm on LinkedIn. Obviously, happy to talk about any aspect of this, and how I can help if that's the case.
great. Yes, people are welcome to reach out to me as well. I am on LinkedIn. I am not on the rest of the socials. Gotta know your own boundaries. And I may not be as responsive to email as friends and colleagues and students would like, but I am doing my best. It's one of my human imperfections. My email hygiene is a work in progress. So yes, but I'm sure Pernilla will respond within 24 hours if you reach out to her.
Absolutely, maximum. No, but you feel free to reach out to me as well. I mean, I have a thing for email. I like to have a clean inbox. But I think a good final message is that there is hope, and we stay together. We are stronger together, and I mean, Protein Society is a platform for that. I want to give you one last piece of hope, and I don't know if that's a hope or craziness, but I am going to join you in the US in the summer. So I'm coming to the US, and I will help with this from the inside in the future. So
Fantastic.
despite everything, I still think that you can do great in the US, and I'm going to do it.
I think
Wow.
I'll add to
Yeah.
that too. I mean, I want to thank all of you again. This was just a wonderful discussion and food for thought and hope for the future. And I think I want to encourage everybody to continue to engage in whatever. There are many, many ways that we're doing many things. I mean, many of them have been mentioned as throughout this webinar, but you can look on our website. There are more resources there, and come in person. It's a great community, and you can find we're changing our programming at the meeting in response to what we hear from our community. We've we have an opening event where we're going to try to connect people and hear concerns. That's in direct response to what we're hearing from our community. And so, and then beautiful science and lots of different committees, lots of different ways to engage through education, through science, research, also research and how to communicate, all these things. So yeah, it's a wonderful community. I encourage everyone to come, and thank everyone for all your contributions again. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, everybody. Take care.
Thank you.
Take care.
Have a good day.